All right, well, we are going to be headed to a by-election in the riding of N.D.G. Westmount. It's to fill the seat vacated by Liberal Mark Garneau. Y'all remember he resigned from politics. He was talking about the Official Languages Act and said, hey, listen, some of this is a hill to die on. And he announced he was going to leave politics. Now, last night, the Liberals in N.D.G. Westmount chose former party president N.D.G. as their candidate, so we know who the Liberals will have on the ballot come June 19th. But looking to flip the Liberal stronghold and gain a seat in Ottawa is the Green Party of Canada, and their candidate, who's also the deputy leader of the party, Jonathan Pedneault, who joins us now in studio. Can I call you Jonathan?
Yeah, for sure.
Jonathan, Thanks for coming into the studio here.
Very happy to be here.
First things first, can we just talk a bit about you? Because I've seen some of your background, a lot of traveling around the world, and I'm sort of saying to myself, okay, let's talk about what leads you to run in N.D.G. Westmount. How'd you get there?
Well, I'd call it work instead of traveling. I've been working in many conflict areas.
I made a mistake there. Yeah. You're right. It was work. It was work. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've been working in several conflict areas as a journalist and as a human rights investigator, documenting human rights violations in Africa, in the Middle East. Most recently, I was in Ukraine during the beginning of the conflict in 2022, and being there on the ground, looking at this horrific Russian invasion on Ukraine, sort of strengthened the feeling that I had that I had for a while, that we've entered a very unstable phase in international politics and international relations, and where does that leave us with the climate emergency? I'm one of the pessimists. My colleague Elizabeth still thinks that there is a lot of things that can be done to prevent the worst. I'm the kind of guy who likes to plan for the worst case scenario. And in my opinion, that demands massive investments now in infrastructure, protecting our communities, making sure that Canada will be able to withstand the coming storms. We've had Fiona, we're seeing the fires in Alberta, the floods in Quebec, the ice storm here in Montreal, which affected tens of thousands of people for several days. We'll have more of these events, and it's a tragedy that this Liberal government that's been saying all the right stuff on climate isn't quite getting it.
Can I say something here? Like, the guy who's environment minister now, Stephen Guilbeault, right? He was, eco warrior, climbing buildings, as extreme as it comes, by the way, on climate, if you go back in his history, right? So what do you think just something happens when you enter government where you just need to be a little bit more real world when you enter government and you're given a post like environment minister? What happened to him? If this is a guy that sounds like very much in the same vein as you.
Well, the real world is the U.S. is investing billions of dollars in transforming their economy, making sure that they continue to be a leader in this upcoming economy. We know that fossil fuel is not the future. But when it comes to the Liberals, and I used to be a Liberal. I door knocked with Justin Trudeau in Pedneault in 2007. I almost tried to run for them many years ago. When I look at Guilbeault, I feel bad for the guy. He's someone who's stuck in a system and in a party whose first job is to protect the status quo, and we've seen that. Justin came in, promised electoral reform, diminishing inequalities, and yet 7 years later, no electoral reform. Inequalities are increasing throughout the country, here in Montreal as well, and in N.D.G. Westmount we see that on a daily basis. It's a party that supports the status quo, that supports protecting the interests of the powerful, and sadly, we see candidates who proclaim that they are progressive. N.D.G. proclaims to be progressive. She's done a lot of incredible work, but if you look at Canada 2020, the group that she's heading, they're receiving donations from Suncor and Shell and Amazon, and I'm like, well, there's a bit of a disconnect here. And to me, that highlights the Liberal Party. There's a bit of hypocrisy going around. It's the foundation and think tank industrial complex in this country, which so many big names in this country are a part of, that rely on those donations. But let me just step back here for a second here, because I want to talk about N.D.G. Westmount and why you're running there. So tell me a little bit about yourself, where'd you grow up? What are your connections to the riding? Let's get a little bit into that here. My connections to writing are are those of many Quebecers in the sense that I'm francophone. I'm from Longueuil. I grew up with a single mom who's from Lac Saint Jean. So whenever I looked at Westmount N.D.G. growing up, it was like, oh wow, these big mansions, the Anglo minority. I learned English pretty late in my own life. But I've always been someone who's been very dedicated to the protection of minority rights. I mean, my entire career is built on human rights, on defending the Charter of Rights and Freedom. Those are things that are extremely important to me. And when Garneau resigned, a Canadian hero, a guy who's, the first Canadian in space, a minister that had gravitas, and to see him being, pummeled by the Liberals, by his own party when he stood up to defend the rights of his riding I find that a tragedy, and I truly wonder how. If N.D.G. Westmount sends another Liberal MP.
Let me just ask you something here, because you mentioned the mansions in Westmount. And, I think there's a lot of people in this riding in the N.D.G. side.
Yes.
I would say, hey, N.D.G., we're working class.
Absolutely.
We're a modest riding. We're not mansion. We're not just the mansion in Westmount riding here.
Precisely.
But have you spent time in this riding? Because by the way, I know you're co-leader of a party. You want to get into the House of Commons. Sometimes that's what parties do. They'll parachute a candidate in, right, into a riding just to try and get voted in, right? So do you have some connections with the riding?
I've got lots of friends. We've got a strong organization in N.D.G. Westmount. The Greens this is one of the places where the Greens have done the best in Quebec in the past because, as you mentioned, N.D.G. has so many community groups that are extremely active. They understand that the Green Party, and especially right now, is sort of the only progressive opposition party in the House. The NDP keeps on supporting the Liberals on pretty much everything they do. They won't vote their budget down, despite the clear broken promises that the Liberals have been guilty of for the past 7 years. And we stand up and we speak our truth and we defend our communities. That's what Elizabeth May does for her riding. That's what Mike Morris does for his riding in Kitchener Centre. The main job of a Green MP is to protect the interests of their community and represent them. We put people ahead of politics, which sadly I can't say of many other political parties in today's Parliament in Ottawa. So for me, with these values of independence and integrity, looking at the situation in N.D.G. Westmount, looking at how we came to have this by-election now, because a Liberal caucus that's so happy to take the money from Westmount, from N.D.G., but doesn't want to take or listen to their voices, that's the kind of situation that infuriates me. And I want to be there to defend the interests of that community, but also in a context where, again, we've got C-13 that was just voted for the second time now.
Let me get your take on that. We're with Jonathan Pedneault. He's Deputy Leader of the Green Party of Canada. He will be candidate in N.D.G. Westmount in the by-election that's coming up on June 19th. So what is your take? What is the Green Party's take? Your take on the Official Languages Act? Because in this riding, people are very upset that the Liberals, they feel, have thrown the Anglo community under the bus. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Once again, our party doesn't whip in the House. So that means that, it's not Elizabeth or I who's going to come in and say, hey, Mike, or hey, whoever's in the caucus, you need to vote in one direction or another. We do a lot of work consulting with our communities in order to inform how we vote in the House. For me, it's very clear. If I was the N.D.G. Westmount MP right now, I would have voted against this bill. That's very clear to me. Personally, I'm a francophone. I'll say I support 98% of that bill. I support the spirit of the bill. I think it's important to protect linguistic minorities throughout the country. But let's be very clear here. The Anglophone community in Quebec is a minority within Quebec. That's a hill I'll die on as well if needs be. But furthermore, I'm very, very concerned about several governments throughout Canada toying right now with the Charter of Rights and Freedom. The way in which Bill 96 here in Quebec was passed with preemptive use of the notwithstanding clause is something that is very damaging to our Constitution, to the protection that this Constitution forces, and to see the Liberals now including Bill 96 or references to Bill 96 in C13 in the Official Languages Act is very worrying to me.
Jonathan, we're going to have to leave it there. Obviously, June 19th will be here faster than we all expect. So have a good time on the campaign front. I guess, will you be spending, I imagine, a lot of time in the riding, meeting, door to door, that kind of thing?
I'll be there day in and day out. Yeah.
All right, that's the voice of Jonathan Pedneault. He's a deputy leader of the Green Party of Canada, and he is the candidate for the Green Party in N.D.G. Westmount in the by-election coming up on June 19th. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, Elias.